What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. We've got a fun one for you today. We've got Jake Dovel joining us. Jake is the man responsible for the design of the Professional Precision Adjust, which just hit stores, and we're really excited about it. We wanted to have him come in and pick his brain, learn a little bit about Jake and what went into the design of this awesome new sharpener. Jake, thanks for joining us. Let's get into it.
Thanks for having me.
Before we jump into the product itself, let's get to know Jake a little bit. Jake, you've pretty much grown up here at Worksharp because your dad, Dan Dovel, is one of the principal engineers here, and he's had his hands in a lot of the successful products around here. I don't think that you always thought you were probably going to become an engineer here yourself, but I'm going to let you tell that story. Tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into engineering in the first place.
Thanks, Kyle. I started out just hanging out with my dad as a little kid here, and he'd bring us in on slow days, just as a form of free babysitting, and we would run around the building when we can and get lost trying to find the bathroom or whatever, and I would. Basically grew up here kind of that way, shadowing him when I could, when it made sense, and then
he let you tinker on stuff. And
yeah, and I used to clean the 3D printers and stuff for him. It's tasks that would keep me busy and kind of out of their way.
Yeah.
It was also kind of just a fun thing, way for me to spend time with my dad, of course.
Yeah, and you're getting to play with cool stuff like 3D printers at an age when they weren't even that known at the time. You got to expose to some pretty cool technology, I would imagine.
Yeah, and it was fun, and we cheated and did science experiments and stuff for my school in the building.
Nice.
Using the slow motion cameras and stuff from work for my classes.
That's awesome.
So it was pretty fun, and then basically my childhood progressed that way until I got old enough. I graduated high school, and then we had an internship available for the summer, and I basically applied for that internship just to have something to do. Fresh out of high school, I didn't really know where I wanted to go, so I 2 weeks after I graduated, applied.
And the internship was in the with engineering, or?
It was actually in our quality department. It was they called it statistical process analysis. Basically, it's a really fancy word for I was entering data in Excel spreadsheets all day. Very, very many mundane, task kind of thing. I was in one of my production auditor's desks all day, just sorting basically files, and then she would come and kick me out when she needed her computer.
Sounds
every once in a while. So it was kind of.
Sounds very exciting.
It was super thrilling. And then from there, basically the 3 months ended, and they decided that I was useful and valuable enough that they kept me around, and I basically kept that internship going.
Nice.
I did a lot of the early life testing on our products, so we basically, do a lot of hands-on to see what could go wrong, how I want our abrasives to last and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I spent the majority of literally a year basically sharpening every day, just looking for, things like that, what scenarios could happen.
So after you finished up your internship, you'd done the quality stuff, how did you transition into the engineering job, and what was the first project that you ended up working on?
What basically ended up happening is my dad had a use for me after the internship was done. It was I got something to keep him busy, and that I had no other plans to go. So basically they tossed me on a lot of my life testing and stuff for kind of the products he was working on, and that's really the start of my journey of kind of becoming his shadow or apprentice, and really where I started to pick up on the engineering side. The first major project I got handed was actually MKD, basically the in-store sharpening display.
Okay, yeah, so when you go into the store, the little display with the videos on it that kind of shows you how to use the products?
Yeah, okay. Basically the idea there was that it was a project that someone who didn't know what they're doing could tackle. It was low risk for me and for the company to do, but it was technical enough that I could see if I'd like to do this kind of work. Yeah. So it was kind of a trial phase, and I was lucky enough to have a company that was willing to try me out.
Take a shot on you.
Yeah, and then it worked out. So from there, I basically progressed in getting more and more of those kind of smaller projects, and then it built up over time. The last bigger project I did was the kitchen line of sharpeners that pull through and the kitchen edge and the hunting rod, and I've just kind of grown and been handed more and more greater opportunities as I go.
Jake, so you've had to pay your dues, it sounds like. You've come up through the ranks, not the funnest projects to work on, but definitely probably learned a lot doing that. And eventually that led you to working on this project here. And man, it seems like, at least to me, you hit this thing out of the park. Tell us a little about how and when this project came to you and how it got started.
Yeah, so the birth of the Pro was really as soon as we launched the PAJ itself, and we just started collecting feedback from customers, and that product was very well received, but it left them wanting a little bit more. It's it was a yes, we love this, and can we also have this? So as soon as we started collecting that feedback and from so many people, we went, okay, there's clearly something else that we need to do here.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those, like, it was great, people loved it, and it was an entry level for them. They were like, but I wish it did a little bit more this or that. And what were some of those things that you were hearing that went into building this?
Yeah, absolutely. The main thing was they wanted bidder abrasives to sharpen bidder knives easier, a larger capacity, range of knives they could sharpen, so little tiny knives down to bid knives. And they just wanted to improve upon the kind of the key features of the original model. So they love the fact that clamps were removable, that maybe make it easier to rotate, those kind of things. So
yeah, it's kind of like we had a great thing, but we made it a little bit more robust. Just the little details that maybe they wanted a little bit more for, right? Like,
yeah, it's basically the $50 model's kind of your bare bones, function first, and this is function and a little bit more pizzazz in the way to do it, or a little more high-end way to accomplish the same thing, and you get some additional benefits for that reason.
Yeah, it's kind of the basic model pickup. Now you've got the King Ranch version of it kind of going on with this one. So this wasn't just, we're going to make a bigger precision adjust. There was a lot more that went into this. What were some of the challenges you ran into in making this a larger, more robust product?
The biggest challenge is probably designing the system that can basically do the range of knives that we set out to be. So we're talking, 1/4-inch thick spines with Rambo carries in the movies, all the way down to your grandpa's old timer, little tiny fold out thing. Trying to do that in one complete system was really a challenge.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like there's that out there yet. So that was quite the task they handed you. Curious, where did you set your sights on first? Was it the big knives or was it the small knives?
Both. It was really trying to come up with the architecture and determining the scale that would accept both bid knives and small knives. So we had to play around with, what does a bid knife mean, and how much movement do we need to accommodate that bid knife versus what is a small knife and the same thing. Bid knives generally are steeper angles, so they require a lot more travel than a small knife that is maybe more shallow and a lot shorter.
Yeah.
So that kind of set the framework for how big this thing was going to be compared to its little brother.
Yeah, hearing you talk about the range of knives and how big you had to start. This is actually this model over here is bigger than where we ended up. Tell us a little bit about how that came to be. Is that like the first model you came up with, or where did that land?
That's a really early one. Basically, we were trying to figure out how to figure out which knives we want to sharpen as far as their actual dimensions, and then what angle they wanted to accommodate to. So when we originally started, my goal was to actually sharpen cleavers to the angle a cleaver wanted to be, which is always, they're really tall knives and they're really steep. So that alone made the thing massive, and that's kind of where Barney guy here is. And then we figured out, how many people use cleavers, or what's the practical use of this size versus how you're going to use it. And we're like, okay, maybe we don't aim at sharpening cleavers. Maybe that's not the match size. Maybe that doesn't make sense.
Gotcha.
And then that's just our way of honing in on what angle we want to use. What's the range of angles we want to offer.
Okay. Did you call that Barney?
We did call it Barney. It's mostly just because it's purple, and it was the 3D print material that was on sale at the time. Is why it's just,
nice.
It's just,
Budget-friendly option on the
exactly. We get tired of printing in black all the time. It's the go-to, but it's just boring, so we mix it up sometimes. Yeah.
And you printed that whole thing in one 3D printer?
So for this project specifically, I had to buy two because they took so long to print. So they're two different printers printing side by side, and they're like 24 hours at a time.
Oh, jeez.
And it was just a way to, print twice as fast.
So there's a few iterations of it. And so eventually, I imagine it wasn't just like tiny knives would go in that clamp. You ended up making a small knife table to accommodate for the smaller knives. Tell us a little bit about how you ended up there.
Yeah, so basically there's a challenge with trying to sharpen really short knives to really low angles. They physically can't go in a clamp anymore because the knife sticks out not far enough from the clamp. So you basically end up sharpening the clamp, instead of sharpening the blade. So the way we went is we have to figure out how to hold onto the knife without actually clamping it. So we ended up with a system where you basically have clearance on top of there's nothing on top of the blade in the way. And that was literally the only way to get
the clamp out of it.
You basically have to take at least the top jaw of the clamp out of the equation, because it is in the physical space that it can be there if you want to sharpen that smaller knife.
Gotcha. But yeah, it kind of seems like that's a totally new space for the industry itself. There's not a lot of great solutions when it comes to small knives outside of just like a freehand system. So this is great to be able to get in at those low angles that are needed. So that was cool to me. That was the first thing I was drawn to. Also, you've got now a space where you can attach more things to the sharpener. Is there plans down the road to add more stuff to this platform?
I mean, that was kind of the idea with the modular platform, is we could, potentially use it to add other things in the future. It started out as just a way to attach the small knife table, because the clamp clearly goes in the frame and the small knife table doesn't need to go in the frame. So how do we hold it on? And as soon as we figured out how we can hold it on, okay, what can we use that for to hold other stuff on?
Nice.
So kind of solving problems with features creates new features.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how they naturally grow over time.
Yeah, so you ended up having to do a little bit of metal, and you still have some plastic in there. Tell us a little bit about integrating those two.
Yeah, so the idea was we would use metal where it mattered, to try to get the fit and function that we wanted, as dialed as possible. The metal has the advantage that we can machine it to really tight tolerances, so it just allows us to put it where we really need it, and not put it where we don't. Because we also what we didn't want to do was develop a 10-pound brick and sell it for $1 million,
Right.
and way overprice it.
Having some plastic helps keep the cost down for the consumer. I know.
It was about cost, and it was about what made sense for where it's needed. Metal in some aspects just makes it harder to move around and use if you want to throw it on your bench. So it's trying to be practical about where we use it.
Yep.
But at the same time, do it right. So another area that we listened to customer feedback in is kind of the support. We saw examples of people basically DIYing their own way to stiffen up the clamp on the PAJ. I've seen photos of people stacking their kids' Legos.
Yeah, dude, I just saw that one recently. Someone was using Legos for it.
Make their own little wood jigs. You see other people out there with 3D printers. And we basically, collect all that stuff and say, hey, actually, that's kind of a cool idea. And then ways we can integrate it into our own system to basically make things as rigid as they can be, when you care about that.
Yeah, that's great, man. And then one that I'm super excited about, or jumped off at me when I first heard we were going to do it, is the digital angle indicator. Tell me a little bit about. I love how it fits on the chassis. It's intentionally put on there in a way that it works really well with the system. Yeah,
so we've seen them in the past. A lot of people DIY hack them. They buy them for picture frames, or for hanging stuff on their wall square, and they try to set them on the sharpener, or they try to use their phone app to try to determine the angle a different way. So what we wanted to do is create a way to have it more integrated into the system, so it felt like part of the sharpener, not like something else you're trying to add on later.
Yeah.
Just to add one more level of coolness and accuracy to the product itself.
Yeah, because it's not like you're just setting it on the rod and trying to figure it out, or on the back of the abrasive. You got it to where it's on the rod, and it's down to quarter degree, right? Is how accurate it gets. That's pretty impressive to be able to get that level of accuracy.
Yeah, we went back and forth a lot on what level of accuracy we want to show, and we decided to go as a fine resolution as possible. And the intent there is to really show how you see the sharpener changing as you move it. We thought if you went the other way and we made them pretty coarse jumps, we would have the scenario where people see it moving a lot and the angle not changing, and that might cause some confusion. So honesty is the best policy, so we're kind of making it as picky as we can. Yeah. So something else that people love and that we heard a lot of feedback on is basically the quality of life improvement of it being able to stow the abrasive out of the way when you go to rotate the knife out of the way. It just saves you, one extra hand. If you use, a similar sharpener for someone else, you end up kind of doing this juggling routine.
You kind of feel like you got your hands crossed over at a certain point.
You have to take it off for something.
When you go to flip the knife, you got to I got to move this thing out of the way over here, and then I flip the knife over, and which is vastly easier than a lot of the rod and clamp systems out there already to be able to just flip it over. But you're talking about being able to actually stow this up out of the way.
Yeah, it just frees up your hand. I mean, it's one less thing you have to worry about when you flip the knife.
Yep.
You don't have to, try to double hand cross like you said.
Yeah, it's one of those simple little I didn't know I needed it until I needed it.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Once you have it, it's really hard to go back to the other way.
Right.
For me personally. But.
Yep. Totally. One other thing that I think is cool, and man, I almost forget to do it a lot of the time, is the kickback feature of being able to rotate the machine back to be able to flip over larger knives. Tell us a little bit about how that came to be and how'd you land on that, because it's kind of a unique thing.
Yeah, similar to the other ones, it was kind of a quality of life improvement. We basically wanted to be able to flip over larger knives without having to hang them off the edge of the table or having to remove the clamp. So it's just how do we provide enough room to flip over a knife that's 10 inches long without having to disassemble the sharpener, and change all your settings every time you do it.
Levitate it up.
Yeah, or do the kind of the awkward table tilt if your knife's too big.
So just tilt it back and flip it over. Now, sometimes the best designs are the simplest ones, right? Like to make room for it.
There was a lot of other, versions or ideas we kind of had of ways to accomplish the same thing, but we landed on this one because it was simple and robust, and it ended up being where your hand already was when you're sharpening, so it felt more natural to use. Because one of your hands is usually on top of the sharpener anyway, especially if you're using kind of the parked feature. You land your hand up there.
Okay.
So it just felt
easy enough to just.
It felt more natural than kind of the other ways to do it.
And the picture here, it looks like you were thinking of going high.
Yeah, that was the initial intent. Is like, how do you flip a knife that big? Well, you make it really tall. So let's just we jack the thing up in the air, to try to get enough basically clearance from the table that you could swing the knife all the way 180 degrees over. But
I gotta ask, I'm a little curious, are there any secrets that you can share with us in the audience about this sharpener that maybe somebody doesn't know about it?
There's a few little sharpening hacks that if you are in the Worksharp family, you can figure out or know yourself. Like if you're owner of the GSS, you figure out that you can mount the GSS plates on the Precision Adjust, Pro Precision Adjust.
It's the same size abrasive.
So the spacing and everything is the same, so they'll clip right on there, but the GSS plates are a 1/4 inch wider. So if you want an even wider abrasive, you can run them.
Nice.
There's a little hack. There's a little weirdness that they're a different thickness that you have to compensate for, which you can use the digital angle indicator for.
Okay.
But that's another cool one.
That's awesome. I had no idea that you could do that. Are there any other mix and match parts things that you can do with this, or is that just the one?
You can hack your own other abrasives. Like I've seen people stick films and stuff to the back side of the plates because they're double-sided and we use the one side. So basically, you can buy your own adhesive films, stick them to the blank side, and then you essentially make yourself a whole stropping kit out of the existing plates.
Oh, for like those finer grits, if you want to go.
If you want to go crazy and get to 12,000 or whatever, you can literally just stick them on the back of the plates for you to give you. And
yep. I think I've seen a little bit of that with the current one, but that's like another way to do it.
It's one of those ones I expect people to figure out if they haven't already.
Right. Well, Jake, man, I think you nailed it. I'm excited to see what kind of feedback we get on this. I know it's already out there and we're already hearing some good stuff, but man, I just love hearing that you're open to hearing people's feedback, and maybe we'll continue to improve on this. But you should be proud of yourself, man. I think you knocked this out of the park. We put this thing through thousands of sharpenings to make sure it was right. A lot of people were talking about that we needed this a long time ago, but man, I know you went through and made sure we got it right the first time. So well done. Is there anything else you want to add before we get out of here with these guys?
Well, thank you. I'm excited to see and hear more about customers' feedback. I'm for one, the number one viewer of these videos, and I'm perusing the comments looking for every little tidbit of info I can.
Right on. So make sure you guys comment down below, give us some feedback. What do you love about it? What else can Jake do to make it better for you guys? Because that's something we want to hear for sure, right? Mm-hmm. Awesome, man. Well, thanks for coming on. I know this was probably something that got you a little out of your comfort zone, but man, you crushed it. Loved having you on. Guys, thanks for watching. If you're new to the channel, make sure you like, subscribe, and we'll catch you on the next one.